Hello. Up on the let's make it better than it was before bench. Today is a 1968 Wheelhorse garden tractor, lawn tractor. It's a good running little motor, but it's tired, very tired. I had refreshed this motor maybe 15, 18 years ago, I suppose. And it's either time for another one, or in the case of this particular project, we're going to replace it with a different engine. This is, I don't know, maybe 7-8 horse motor, I'm assuming. And it's definitely underpowered. Like I said, it runs good, but it's just, you know, either rings are worn or something, but it needs a complete rebuild. Part of the other known issues with it is it uses the old generator slash starter, and it's failed at this point. Still starts, doesn't charge, so I'm assuming the voltage regulator has failed on the thing or something to that effect. Never did a great job of charging batteries, which generally those generators don't do that. So we do use this tractor to keep the track or the trail cleaned up in the yard here. We ride our little toys on, and it does have enough more power to do okay with the blade, smoothing stuff out. But if you put any pressure on it to do some more scraping and digging, it tends to drag the thing down. And on top of it all, the tractor has this harrow metal spiky thing you drag behind it to help tear up the ground. And with that on there, it won't do anything. It just bogs out and dies. So what we're going to do is put this in it. This is a 10 horse Briggs that I know runs really well. It's taken off a different lawnmower that was used for some other project. We're going to put that motor in it. But before we do anything, let's take some measurements and make sure that we're not going to have any issues with hood clearance or shaft diameters or pulley stuff. See how easy we can make this swap be. Where it's literally just bolted in, put the pulleys on it, hook up some cables, and call it done. See what happens. So let's tear into it, see what we got going on. I'll probably have to get some heat on that or something to get that off, but good news. Well, first off, electric PTO clutch. That'll come in handy with something, but it looks like it's the same shaft that's on the tractor itself. So let's get the sheet metal out of the way next. Now I'll have to get the exhaust out of the way to get, oh, never mind, yeah. So now we'll get the clutch out of the way. probably get this piece of tin off the top, and then let's take some measurements and see if it's gonna work. And boom, 1 inch shaft there. Let's go over to the tractor. And bam, 1 inch shaft. Okay, perfect. So we know we don't have to mess with that. The pulleys that are on the engine we can use without any issues. So now let's I don't know, use the crankshaft at the center mark and just measure around everything and see if it, I'm pretty sure it'll fit right there, but let's just make sure before we go digging around, pulling stuff out. There's a starter on this thing. Starter's up there. The starter's ready. Ooh, yeah. Starter might be getting in the way of the battery maybe. So now let's take some measurements and see what we got. Be right back with in-depth analysis of the situation. All right, after some precision measuring, the only challenge is going to be the battery. The motor will probably land, the starter will probably land about a ½ inch over the battery, front of the battery right there. But I've got about 3 inches more room in the front because the carburetor on that motor's in the back. So you can move the full motor forward and clear the battery, no problem, which is the worst case scenario. We'll have to buy a longer belt to make this work. This is the only challenge I could foresee at this point in time. We've been through this before though. Something's gonna come up and screw something up. But anyways, got a good enough start here that I think we could pull this motor out of here, start cleaning things up, and get ready for the other one to rest back in its place. Let's get started. We like tearing stuff apart. This will be fun. So before we clean this all up and start fiddling, let's grab the other engine and set it inside the chassis here and make sure it clears the, you know, whatever it needs to clear. We want to be able to close the hood on it. I don't want to mutilate the tractor at all in any way, shape, or form. So I mean, obviously it's not an original tractor of any sort, so, but I don't want to muck it up too much. So let's grab the motor, set it in here, see how it's going to fit, make sure the hood's going to close on it, and then it should be a simple process of getting this to function, other than just maybe a little bit longer belt. But let's set it in and see what happens. Now it looks like it's got to go that way just a bit to clear the hood. Yeah, it's a little tight, I guess, but I don't know, a little bit of work. One issue I do see is this particular pulley And the clutch mechanism here is in the way a little bit, so I have to do a little bit of a little redesign maybe of that. Make them manipulate this pedal out just a little bit maybe. I want to dig around a little bit. Like I said, I don't want to mutilate the tractor too much, but I think we can pull this, pull it out a little bit, then it'll clear the hood just fine. So that's a little bit tight, but you know, the least amount of work you get away with, the better off you are. So let's see if we can move some things around here and make it fit a little bit better. All right, here's the theory, or here's the plan. I need a plate, obviously in here, because these holes here are going to end up in here someplace. Which there's no material there to bolt it to. So what I did was took some carriage bolts and we'll weld them to this plate, and then up through here, bolt it to the motor, flip the motor down, put it in place. This plate will fall right into this little groove here. It's exactly as wide as this groove here, and then we'll weld it in here. Weld into place. And now we got studs sticking up, because with all the, I don't know, steering shaft and everything in the way, it'll be tough to get a bolt up through there. This will make it much easier. I know it doesn't make shit for sense. Let me get it in place and I'll show you and prove that I know what the hell I'm talking about. Hold on. Ha! Told you I wasn't full of shit. So there we go. That's what it's going to look like. That plate will be, it's just, so everything's just kind of tack welded in right now. But I'll pull the motor off now and final weld that mount into place. And that'll take care of them engine mounting, and it's to fiddle with the wiring and everything else. Okay, welded them in, slapped a little paint on. Now you can see what's going on there. So like I mentioned, right there is a steering shaft right underneath these bolt heads here. So getting a bolt up through there would kind of suck. So that's why I welded those in from the bottom. They're studs now. Slide the motor on top, 4 bolts, and it's done. So we'll get the motor bolted back in, permanent like, and then I don't know, figure out what to do next, I guess. Alright, got the fuel line hooked up, and also got the starter solenoid in place. Is that the right place for it? Probably not. Is that where I'm going to put it? Absolutely. We'll get the battery back in here and then start hooking up these battery cables and starter cables and the start solenoid switch, or the ignition switch to the solenoid, so we can see if it cranks over. I hate you, solenoid. Alright. Turns out the solenoid I hooked up didn't work, so I dug the one off the original tractor, which was originally off of obviously a Ford car, 70s Ford starter solenoid, and now we've got crank. So happy with that. Now we'll move to shutting this thing off. So ignition and voltage regulator. So we'll get that wired in, and that should be it for the wiring and the fuel. So we'll just have to then try to start it, I guess. I don't know, we'll figure it out. But next we'll do voltage regulator and starting, ignition, cutoff. The wiring's done. I just got to tidy this up a little bit. It's a little messy. Got everything, you know, switch in. Oh, I had to change a different switch. The original switch in the original tractor, it was a hot coil. I mean, it had 12 volts going to ignition coil, kind of like on a car, an old car. This has obviously got a contained ignition coil that uses ground to stop. So basically ground out the coil to shut it off. So I had, the other switch was just for hot, didn't have a ground contact on, so I'd switch back to the original switch that was on the tractor itself. Did wire up the headlights. The switch here, yes, there's a cigarette lighter in this thing. Woo, 1968, baby. So yeah, just got to wire in the regulator for the charging system to the battery, hot side here, and then we'll be done. So we'll move on now. I don't know. Let's get the cover back on. As you can see here, I'm gonna have to take a little bit of material off the actual face of the flywheel cover because of the fact that the hood's gonna touch it. So let's move on to the next part. All right, wire hooked up to the battery from the charging system. We got our little cutout, which I'll put a piece of tin over the top of that. There, clears the hood now. So all we have left now is the throttle cable. Put the fuel tank back on. So let's go. I gotta go hunt down a throttle cable someplace. Find something somewhere to use, because the throttle's up here now instead of back here. So let's go find a cable. Template making time. Make a plate that's going to go over the top of this here. Some people have used the put it on here and tap around the edge to mark it, which works good. Not quite as well when you're dealing with the flimsy tin. People put grease around here to mark it off. You're dealing with something old and shit like this, I'll just throw a little bit of paint on it around the edge, like so. Set it in the corner there, and then just walk yourself around, pressing ever so slightly, leave an imprint. There you go. Just cut that out, transfer it to a piece of sheet metal, we'll weld it in there and cover this hole back up. All right, that'll be good for now. I'll take it back off and I'll weld it all the way around solid, but you know, now you got the idea. Engine clears the hood. And so let's finish cleaning up the wiring, I guess. Well, while we're waiting for some parts to show up, I've got a new throttle cable, longer one, showing up for this thing. Let's see if we can make it run. That started really easy. I knew it ran, but it actually started easier than I thought it was going to. All right, so it does, yeah, it runs. I'm just pretty sure it was gonna run just because, like I said, it came out a running tractor. So, but everything's good there. One thing I should check is the charging system and see if that's working. But yeah, now we just got to get the throttle cable. And I got a new ignition switch on the way too, because the other one was pretty shot. We could probably get this thing on the ground and start working on getting the harrow hooked up on it. So when this finally comes, we could just go use it. So we'll do next, we'll get it on the ground and get the blade off of it, get the harrow on it, and there's an arm that goes from this arm here straight through the back. That's broken right now. So we'll get that refixed and replaced. And then as soon as the throttle cable comes here, I mean, well, I guess we could duct tape this up here and actually go use it, but let's do that. Let's get on the ground. It does work. It works really well. You got a little tour of the track, and you've seen both of us together the fact that a tree had fallen down on it. So apparently I got to fire up the chainsaw and fix that problem before I can actually use it. But it's doing exactly what I want to do. The motor is amazingly powerful compared to what was in there. Before, when I had this thing on here, even in low gear, it would bog the engine down and stop it. This one, I was in high gear, I couldn't bog the motor down. So perfect, exactly what I wanted to do. So we're gonna call that a win. We'll close this one out. The only thing I have left to do on it is to finish welding in that piece of plate steel all the way and put a coat of paint on it. And then once the throttle shows up, I'll move it back up onto the dashboard where it belongs. And also that ignition switch. As you see, I'm missing the actual nut that holds it in place from the old tractor, but I ordered a new one, so I'll get that plugged in and we'll call this project done. So that's a transplant, heart transplant from a 8-horse Kohler to a 11-horse Briggs, and we'll put this old 68 Wheelhorse back to work again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.